priestesses of Dibella looking for the next chosen one, pirates raiding Skyrim's most notable trading company, Tamrielic legends that are as old as the plane itself. In today's video, I wanted to run through 3 fun and interesting side quests that are featured in the Elder Scrolls V Skyrim. The quests in question are the Blessings of Nature, Rise in the East, and the Heart of Dibella. Each of these missions offers an intriguing and thought-provoking story. They deal with Skyrim's current political climate, Tamriel's own creations, and the will of the Divines. Not only are there important in-universe events, but there are new and unique locations to discover, new NPCs to interact with, and some interesting new gear to get your hands on. So with all that being said, let's go ahead and see how each story unfolds. Let's run through the quests, listen to the dialogue, and carry out the events. Then, at the end of each quest, I'll discuss a little bit about each one's lore, themes, messages, and any possible theories. If that sounds like a good time, then sit back, relax, and enjoy some tales from the Elder Scrolls. The first quest that we'll start with today is the Blessings of Nature. The story begins with the Dragonborn visiting the city of Whiterun. Maybe by going around town, you've heard rumors regarding something called the Gildergreen. Maybe you've even seen this wonder for yourself. It's the grand tree that's in the center of town. While it looks magnificent, there's no denying that there's something off about it. It almost looks sickly, practically as if it's diseased. Well, as it would turn out, something has actually happened to it. While it may seem like the Jewel of Whiterun is forever damaged, there is actually a way to heal it. In order to appease your curiosity and to find answers to your questions, the player can speak with Danica Puurspring. She's a priestess of Kinnereth, and she knows all about the Gildergreen.
The Gildergreen, yes. It's a bit of an eyesore at the moment. More of a problem for the pilgrims than for me, but not many of them around anymore. To the east of here is a hidden grove where the Eldergleam resides. It's the oldest living thing in Skyrim, maybe all of Tamriel. Our tree here in the city was grown from a cutting of that tree. You can still feel the glory of the mother tree through it. Even its name is an echo. I've thought about that. Trees like this never really die, they only slumber. I think if we had some of the sap from the parent tree, we could wake up its child. But even if you could get to the Eldergleam, you couldn't tap it, not with any normal metal. Eldergleam is older than metal, from a time before men or elves. To even affect it, you have to tap into the old magic. You'll have to deal with the Hagravens. I've heard about the weapon they've made for sacrificing Spriggans. It's called Nettlebane. The hags terrify me, or I would have gone after it myself. Your spirit is strong. Kinnereth's winds will guide your path. It's held in a Hagraven nest called Orphan Rock.
This conversation with Danica is what officially brings on the quest, the Blessings of Nature. Orphan Rock, the location of this mysterious Nettlebane, is southeast of Whiterun. It's northeast of Helgen and right in a small patch of open land beneath the throat of the world. Arriving, the player has to navigate this small camp in search of the tool. There are various points of interest around the area that detail the lives of its inhabitants. Orphan Rock is home to 4 hags and a hagraven. The hags, or witches, are spellcasters and mainly rely on their knowledge of the School of Destruction. Their levels are dependent on the players. The best way to deal with them is swiftly. Since most of their attacks are ranged, you can either give them a taste of their own medicine, or charge in quickly and silence them up close. As for the hagraven, she's level 20, can fire off some deadly destruction spells, heal herself in a pinch, and she's capable of using some fairly dangerous melee attacks. It's also a good idea to deal with her as quickly as possible, as she can prove to be a challenging foe for most players. Once all of the threats have been eliminated, the Dragonborn is free to take Nettlebane. It's quite the odd little dagger. Its design is unique, and it's true that it looks quite natural. Smithing designs and craftsmanship have certainly come a long way. If you tried to temper this blade, it would take ebony ingots, which, when you think about it, makes sense. It's said to be an ancient tool, and if the legends are to be believed, ebony is the crystallized blood of Lorkhan himself. With Nettlebane in the player's possession, they can return to Whiterun and speak once more with Danica. Now, interestingly, the priestess can be found in the Temple of Kinnereth, and she won't be alone. Along with the sick, wounded, and other worshippers, there's now a man named Maurice Jondrel. Depending on when you enter the temple, Danica and Maurice could be seen arguing with one another. Maurice is a pilgrim and he's not too happy with the state of the Gildergreen. Danica tries to explain that it was struck by lightning and that her time is needed elsewhere. Jondrel isn't too happy with her reasoning though, and calls it a disgrace. He believes that her priority should be tending to the tree and honoring Kinnereth. Now, fast forward to the player's arrival. You can tell Danica that you were successful with retrieving Nettlebane.
So, have you gotten Nettlebane back from those filthy hag ravens yet? Oh, I honestly didn't expect you to come back. Of course, I'm glad you did. Now, I don't really want to touch that thing, though. Do you think you could handle the next steps? Eldergleam Sanctuary Grove is to the east of here. You can use Nettlebane to retrieve some of its sap.
As Danica exits the conversation, Maurice steps in and confronts the player.
Was I correct in hearing that you were traveling to the Grove of the Eldergleam? I am a traveler, a pilgrim. I follow the voice of Kinnereth wherever it can be heard. I've dreamed of seeing Eldergleam for years. Might I travel alongside you? I promise not to get in the way.
This is a pretty important decision. It does technically affect the outcome of this quest. By choosing not to have him accompany you, you get locked out of one possible ending. So it might be wise to have Jondrel follow you to the Eldergleam.
I thank you for your kindness.
Maurice is a bit of a poor follower. Several online sources say that he's overly aggressive with hostile NPCs. What's more, for the time being, he doesn't offer any engaging dialogue or follower services. Now, as for the matter at hand, the Eldergleam Sanctuary is located on the eastern side of Skyrim. It's directly south of Windhelm and southwest of Witchmist Grove. Depending on your route there, you may have to deal with a dragon as well as some nuisance creatures. Lucky for you though, Jondrel is quite the fearless brawler. Arriving at the sanctuary, the player can feast their eyes on the glory of the Eldergleam. It's a beautiful and magnificent tree. It's much larger than the Gildergreen and certainly looks a lot older. It's the jewel of the grove, and what's more, Maurice isn't the only pilgrim here to see it. Other travelers can be spotted within the sanctuary, and some of them even have some relevant dialogue for the player.
Praise Kinnereth for allowing such beauty in the world. You are in Eldergleam Sanctuary. Just a small glimpse of what beauty Kinnereth has to offer. Wonderful place, isn't it? Yes, my friend. Though no one has been able to get close to her for as long as I can remember. As you can see, Eldergleam's roots are large and stretch far, blocking any path to her trunk. Though, believe it or not, there are rumors of a weapon that even Eldergleam herself would lift her roots for, more out of fear than respect. The rumors were true. I beg of you, don't harm the tree. Nothing good can come of it.
Perhaps the most interesting part of the Eldergleam's hideaway is how peaceful it is. There's no violence or chaos in here. There are no guards or guardians, no wild animals, no bandits, and no disturbances. The air is still, the waters are flowing, the pilgrims are happy, and the Eldergleam itself is beaming. After following the pathway up, the player will land at a blocked off section. The Eldergleam's roots have grown into the path, and at first glance, it doesn't seem like there's a way around them. However, that's where Nettlebane comes in. By equipping the dagger and slashing at the roots, the Eldergleam seems to move on its own accord. Whether this is out of honor or fear is unknown. This series of events happens a couple of times until finally the Dragonborn reaches the top of the sanctuary. However, by now, Maurice is caught on to the player's actions and has strong words for you.
I had no idea you were a man of violence. What exactly are your intentions in this blessed place? You would violate this marvel of Kinnereth's glory to fix that half-breed stump in Whiterun? That's abominable. Barbaric! I'll have no part of this. Why didn't you tell me what you intended? Well, yes. There is something. It won't repair the tree back at the temple, but we could bring them a new one. Follow me. I think I can convince the tree to help us.
By choosing to hear out Maurice, that automatically decides which ending the player will receive. Jondrel heads up to the Eldergleam and begins to show his respects.
The Eldergleam has blessed us with a sapling. You should take it to Whiterun. Danica will want to see that the true blessings of nature lie in renewal, not a slavish maintenance. I believe I'll stay here and bask in Eldergleam's warmth a bit longer. Good luck on your travels. May Kinnereth's wind carry only the sweetest scents.
In front of Maurice, there's now a small Eldergleam sapling. It's nowhere near the same size or magnificence of the Gildergreen, but in due time, it could definitely get there. By taking the sapling, the player is now free to exit the sanctuary. However, not before looting the hidden away boss chest. Nettlebane is needed to access it, but at this point, a couple more slashes to its roots won't do any harm. Returning to Whiterun, the Dragonborn can now speak with Danica Purespring one last time.
Do you have the Eldergleam sap? But I can't run the temple without the support of people who are inspired by the Gildergreen. How can this little tree bring new worshippers? You're right, of course. It can be hard to hear the winds of Kinnereth when all you hear are the rabble in the temple.
God's bless you.
Death feeds new life. I'm sure that in time, this little sapling will grow into a new Gildergreen that will tower over Whiterun. Thank you.
With that, thus puts an end to the quest, The Blessings of Nature. Now, Danica can be used as a restoration trainer and has master level skills. Maurice hangs around the sanctuary for a little while longer. The player gets to keep Nettlebane, now nothing more than a unique and ancient dagger, and in due time, the Gildergreen will be restored to its former glory, and then some. Now, reverting back to the conversation with Jandrel, the player has the option of carrying out their original mission within the sanctuary. When Maurice confronts the player regarding their intentions, you can stay the course and commit to taking the Eldergleam sap.
With pleasure. Nature has a way of finding vengeance, though. You walk a bleak path, friend. One that will lead to suffering.
Even though Maurice has a cryptic final message for the player, he still insists on following you to the final step, at least for now. Approaching the Eldergleam, the player can interact with the legendary tree and successfully harvest some of its sap. This completes the objective, but now new problems arise. Spriggans begin to spawn within the sanctuary. What's more, Maurice now turns aggressive and uses his fearless sprawling abilities on the player. Jandrel will always be leveled below the Dragonborn, and really doesn't pose much of a threat. He can easily be disposed of, and furthermore, doesn't have anything of interest on his person. Now, the real threat comes from the Spriggans. Several of them begin to wreak havoc within the sanctuary, and they even kill off the pilgrims who are revering their deity. It almost acts like a cleansing ritual. Punish the wicked by punishing everyone. The Spriggans are placed at level 8 and know a variety of powerful attacks. Spriggan Spray, Spriggan Poison, and Call of the Wild. Fortunately, they are vulnerable to fire, and any sort of related spell or enchantment should do the trick. However, before leaving the sanctuary, there's one boss level Spriggan that the player needs to deal with. Depending on your level, it could be a Spriggan Matron or Earth Mother, both of which are way more challenging foes than their basic counterparts. They share the same type of attacks, but the Earth Mothers and Matrons deal way more damage. Once the way out of the sanctuary is clear, the player can return to Danica and Whiterun for a similar end quest encounter.
Bless you here.
Wonderful. I'll use it to repair the tree. Thank you so much for all your help.
With this ending, Danica can still be used as a master restoration trainer. The player gets to keep Nettlebane, and upon your next visit to Whiterun, the Gildergreen will be restored to its former glory. The main difference with this ending, though, is that Maurice Jandrel is dead, and so are the other innocent pilgrims. Now, let's talk a little bit about the Blessings of Nature. It's a simple yet complex mission. What I mean by that is that its motions and stages are quite easy to follow, and yet its underlying messages are quite intriguing and very thought-provoking. The player embarks on a quest to resurrect a tree that's seemingly only important to pilgrims. Even the resident priests and priestesses don't care much for it. Hence why their call to action is to tap into the mother tree and retrieve some of its sap. After recovering Nettlebane from a band of witches, which mind you, we don't receive a whole lot of background info for, you then go on to this sacred area, whether that's with or without Maurice. After that, you decide whether you want to harm the Eldergleam by tapping into it, or if you want to show reverence to it by having Maurice pray at its trunk. In the end, it all leads to the same outcome though. The tree ends up being resurrected, or rather a new tree gets planted in its wake. Either way, the historical and spiritual significance of the Gildergreen is saved. Now, where this quest gets complex is its messaging. Maurice, a seemingly innocent traveler who comes off as a bit of a jerk in the beginning, is able to see that it's better to pray to the divines and ask for guidance rather than to forcefully take from the world and, by extension, nature. It's he who convinces the Dragonborn that worship, forgiveness, and patience is a better route to go than violence, change, and destruction. It feels fairly ironic, as the actual priestess herself, Danica, is the one who's advocating for the latter. She's the one who wanted the player to retrieve Nettlebane and use it to harm the Eldergleam. Now, you could maybe make the argument that she didn't know the alternative was an option, but given that she's a literal priestess of Kinnereth and she's supposed to worship and revere the divine, I think that point kind of goes out the window. You'd expect the impatient and impulsive pilgrim to be the one who resorts to harm and violence, while the priestess brings up the calm, cool, and collected solution. That's exactly where the quest becomes quite thought-provoking. Sometimes it's those who are further removed from the equation that are able to come up with the best and most efficient ways of solving our problems. Furthermore, it's always a good idea to have multiple ideas, possibilities, and solutions when it comes to tackling conflict like this. Now, while quote, harming the Eldergleam is widely seen as the bad outcome, is it really though? Maybe all it depends on is your mindset. The obvious way to look at it is that the tree is harmed by Nettlebane and responds to it out of fear. That's when the Spriggans, nature's protectors, spawn in and retaliate against the Dragonborn. However, an alternative way of looking at it is that it's a test. If the player comes in wielding the Eldergleam's Bane and seeks its sap, then nature responds with its guardians. This is in order to see if the player is truly worthy of harvesting the tree's sap, and if you make it out of there alive, then you get to keep the prize. I also find it hard to believe that if your intentions are to heal the offspring of such a magnificent wonder, then nature will try to stop you at all costs. Surely, this is something that Kinnereth would understand, as her creation is being used to heal another one of her creations. However, Danica does put it perfectly. There's the circle of life, and death brings on new forms of it. Now, I really wish I could discuss more of Nettlebane, as I find it to be a really interesting tool. It's ancient, mysterious, and Hagravens use it for their rituals. It's said to be one of the only tools that's strong enough to hack through a Spriggan. All we know about it though is that it could be ebony in nature, and that its properties allow it to control and or harm natural creations that are as old as the lands themselves. Unfortunately, there's no more to Nettlebane than that, but perhaps one day in a future installment of the Elder Scrolls, we'll see it make a return. The next quest for this video is titled Rise in the East. This one begins with the player lingering around Solitude's docks. Now, one of Skyrim's key players in trade and shipment is the East Empire Company. In fact, they have a major presence all over Tamriel. This is an organization that's been around for centuries, and we even get to experience a storyline for them in Morrowind. Well, in current-day Skyrim, the EEC has a warehouse within Solitude's boundaries. It's quite the secured and secretive operation. Approaching the entranceway, whether for curiosity's sake or out of your own malicious intent, you'll be stopped by an on-duty guard. However, the information they end up relaying is worth way more than what's inside of the warehouse itself.
The warehouse is for East Empire Company workers only. Entering without permission is a crime. This is the East Empire Company's central warehouse. All of their shipments go through here. Unfortunately, thanks to some problems they've been having, it hasn't seen much use lately. Either way, it's off limits to you. How should I know? I don't work for them. If you want to help, I suppose you could head to Windhelm and talk to Orthus and Dario. He's in charge over there.
There are other quests in the game that actually involve infiltrating the warehouse, but for now, that's something that's left in the past. Following the guard's advice, the player can fast travel to the city of Windhelm and walk along the exterior wall. Here, there are some more docks, presumably for the EEC, but also for the other players who are in the shipping and trade game. Either way, this is where the company's office is located. Within the office is where the player can find Orthus and Dario, the representative for the organization within Skyrim.
I know this place looks horrible. Please, don't hold it against the company. Sad, isn't it? We can't afford to keep the place running since these attacks started. Pirates, you see. Raiding all along the coast, from Hammerfell to Vardenfell. Only the Shattershields appear safe. A very powerful family in Windhelm. They run a private shipping operation and would love to have the docks to themselves. Wouldn't surprise me if they were in league with the pirates somehow. Not yet, no. But perhaps an intrepid person such as yourself could help with that? They have a dark elf who oversees their operations, Suveris Atherin. She's meticulous to a fault, and keeps a logbook with every transaction she makes. If it were to somehow end up in my hands, I wouldn't argue. They call themselves the Bloodhawkers. They've been around as long as I can remember, but only recently focused on our ships. A dastardly group, but they're more than simple brigands. Shrewd, clever, not to be trifled with. Our own security forces are limited, and all the mercenaries are tied up in this ridiculous war. We don't even know their base of operations, and attacking single ships won't really solve the problem.
The Shatter Shields are one of Windhelm's most prominent families. Furthermore, they've actually been the subject for a few of Skyrim's quests. Blood on the Ice and Morning Never Comes. Let's just say that they can't catch a break. Either way, the clan's office is located directly next to the company's. The Dragonborn has easy access to these quarters, and moreover, the only NPC in there will be Suveris Atherin herself. Depending on when you enter the building, she may be guarding the logbook, which is located in the back corner. Speaking with her, she doesn't really have any quest-relevant dialogue. She mostly rants on about the Dunmer-Nord conflict in Windhelm and wishes that things were different. After she gets everything off her chest, Suveris will continue to wander around the office and leave the logbook wide open. Reading it for yourself, it's written from Atherin's perspective. There are a whole bunch of entries in here. Among them are meal specifics and timings, which for the sake of storytelling, I won't be going over. However, as for the other entries, they help to paint the picture. The first one talks about how Torbjorn, the patron of the Shatter Shields, is happy with the company's progress and overall competitiveness. The next entry talks about how one of the workers had to be reprimanded. Their rations were taken away. Suveris writes that while this will result in a temporary lull for the next few workdays, that worker won't make the same mistakes again. The third entry talks about how she's received more grave news from her uncle in Morrowind. One can only assume that this is either related to the war, Vardenfell's demise, or some other unknown woe. The following entry, though, is where she begins to make mention of the pirates. The Bloodhawkers have begun to let competitors' ships pass through unharmed in exchange for gold. This is something that's deemed simply unacceptable. Suveris attempted to speak with Torbjorn about it, but Clan Shattershield has been too busy grieving the loss of their daughter. A couple of days later, though, the matter was finally brought up. This is when Atherin writes about departing for Dawnstar, as there's a captain there that she has dealings with. Stig Saltplank, as he's known, is the contact, and he resides at Windpeak Inn. Although, important to note is that Stig usually proves to be fairly uncooperative. By the end of the logbook, Suveris says that she's reached a new arrangement with the pirates, and that hopefully, word will reach Stig's betters regarding their deal before more EEC ships can make it through. With this tell-all in the player's inventory, they can exit the Shattershield's office and return to Orthus and Dario in the next building over.
How did you get it? No, never mind. I probably shouldn't know. I see. It looks like Suveris has been traveling to Dawnstar to meet with the pirate crew there. Get to Dawnstar and see what you can find out about these rogues. I'd wager they won't be too far from the tavern. Try to find out where their fortress is. The captain, Stig Saltplank, has to know something.
Now it's time for the player to follow in Suveris' footsteps and head northwest. The Windpeak Inn is Dawnstar's only tavern, and it's located just off the main road that leads into town. If you've been in there before, you'll notice that now there are a handful of new NPCs.
You beasts are the worst.
Come now, dearie. Surely we aren't all that bad.
Just leave me alone. I've brought your mead. Now drink it and shut your filthy mouths.
Oh, we've got other things in mind for our mouths, sweetie.
3 of them look to be rugged, raggedy, and strong. Those are Alding, Gyuk, and Erlof. Meanwhile, the 4th appears to be a little more distinguished. For starters, he's wearing more clothing, but he also seems to be the leader of this small crew. This is Stig Saltplank and his band of Bloodhawkers.
Ha! Heard of them? I've been captain in a crew of them for well on 9 years now. What's it to you? Aye, the war keeps the Empire and the locals too busy to worry about us. Halden calls it our golden age. Our secret ingredient, if you will. A battle mage of fearsome cunning. Runs the blood horkers and makes sure the battles end right side up. Well, I can't just tell that to any skeever that washes up. From the look of you, I'm guessing you're more looking to cause some trouble for the horkers. Nah, it would be my pleasure!
There are a few ways for the player to get that information out of Stig. The first way is to brawl with him. He's only level 1, has 50 health, and can be clobbered pretty easily. Otherwise, you can choose to pay him for the tip-off, which will be a varying amount of gold depending on your speechcraft.
Halden will take my hide for this, but Skyrim's been feeling a bit confining lately. We draw counsel at Japhet's Folly. The fools in Windhelm won't go near it, which is fine by us. If you'll pardon me now, my crew needs gathering. Should be in Hammerfell before the other Horkers know who let slip their secret.
The third option is to kill Stig and his men. All 4 of them are level 1. The Dragonborn could probably go in there with a simple iron dagger and still come out on top. Plus, no bounties are required. Stig ends up having a note in his inventory, and that reveals vital information to the player. If Japhet's Folly sounds unfamiliar to you, that's because it should. This is a place that's inaccessible to the player by regular means of travel. There's one way there and one way back. Returning to Windhelm, the Dragonborn heads back into the EEC office to report to Indario. Only this time, Orthus isn't alone anymore.
Adelaisa, I'm sorry.
Sorry isn't good enough, Orthus. There's a lot of gold at stake here, and sniveling isn't gonna get it back.
I've got a top man on the job right now. He should be returning any moment.
This must be him, then. Finally, someone around here that can get things done. Since we're short on soldiers, you'll be coming with us too. No arguments. Anything else you want to say? Halden? I've heard of the man, but never guessed he'd join up with some pirates. This could be even more dangerous than I thought. Head to the ships. We'll plan the assault on the way.
From here, it appears as though this Adelaisa is now running the show. However, before following her command, the player can still communicate their findings with Orthus.
We used to think the pirates had an army of battle mages at their side. As it turns out, it was just one, Halden. I've since learned more about him. The most dangerous sort of man. Quick to anger, but patient in exacting vengeance. He also has a fearsome control of destruction magic. I wish you the best of luck.
That's certainly interesting to hear. If you've played through the Thieves' Den plugin in the Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion, you might have read Captain Dougal's journal. In it, he writes that typically, there's an unspoken code that sailors and pirates don't have mages on their ship. So, it seems like the Blood Horkers don't really follow that. I suppose though that if you're the only crew on the high seas that does have a mage on board, your chances of winning the fights are exponentially higher. Either way, when ready, the player can exit back out into Skyrim and let the mercenaries know that you're good to go.
You're the one who's coming to Japhet's Folly with us, right? You ready to go? All aboard.
This transports the player to an otherwise unreachable section of Skyrim. As the scene cuts back, the Dragonborn is now on a boat. They're somewhere on the Sea of Ghosts, and the only landmark you can see is a fortress off in the distance. You're now well northeast of the College of Winterhold. Unfortunately, there's not a whole lot you can do on the ship itself, as the door leading below deck is sealed tight. On the boat with you is a handful of East Empire Company mercenaries, as well as Adelaisa.
Need something?
Well, here we are, we think. Hard to say. The weather's taken a bit of a turn here. Halden's been known to obscure his hideaways with magic. If we take care of him, the way should be clear to properly assault the island. You've shown yourself useful so far. All these lunks are too afraid of Halden to head in before the fog's cleared. So, if you're willing to perform one more service for the company, we could put this matter behind us for good. Take out Halden, and we'll handle the rest.
Out with it.
As you can probably imagine, Take Out Halden is code for destroy everyone and everything inside of Japhet's Folly. Needless to say, the crawl can be grueling and challenging depending on how you approach it. From the ship, the player can hop overboard and follow the patches of ice to the small island. Now, technically, the quest marker leads the Dragonborn under the island and into a small sea cave. However, if you were curious as to see what's on the isle itself, it's filled with Bloodhorker pirates and their encampments. The pirates come in many different shapes, sizes, and classes. They could be warriors, mages, or archers. Their levels are radiant and can range from 1 to 25. Now, depending on their level, they can be quite challenging foes, especially if you consider their groupings. Some can be on the higher end of the spectrum, and they could be encountered in teams of 2 to 3. Furthermore, once you've taken the boat to Japhet's Folly, there's no returning back to the mainland or civilization in order to restock on potions, supplies, and gear. So, it's best to ensure that you're truly prepared for the battle with the Bloodhorkers. As for the loot out here, it's all fairly standard findings. There isn't anything too extraordinary, at least for the exterior. As for the tower itself, the only way inside from here is through a locked door. The issue is that the door requires a key, so for now, it's a dead end. When ready, the Dragonborn can make their way into the sea cave and begin their hunt for Halden. The beginning area holds a handful of mud crabs. Really, for any character, they're nothing to worry about. The sea cave ends up leading you into Japhet's Folly Towers, and this is where the real crawl begins. If you ended up dealing with the Bloodhorkers out on the island, it's really more of the same here. If anything though, these battles are arguably a bit easier than the previous ones. The pirates are more spaced out from one another, it's easier to sneak in here, and typically, the battles are just 1v1. The goal for the tower is to ascend to the top of the keep. The stairs keep climbing upwards, and every so often, there's a new Bloodhorker to deal with. When the Dragonborn hits the tallest point of Japhet's Folly, that's when they'll run into Halden, the captain of the pirates who's also a formidable wizard. Halden can range anywhere from level 7 to level 40. He dons a heavy set of armor and of course, fights using destruction magic. Halden can be one tough opponent. It's best to either swiftly end the fight, as charging in and cutting the head off the snake works best. Otherwise, you can try and let him drain his magicka in hopes that he comes charging in with his fists. Spellcasters should beware here, as he's capable of casting ward spells which will impede your proficiency. Once Halden has been defeated, the journal updates and the player can now depart from the Folly. Before leaving though, make sure you loot Halden's inventory, the boss level chest, as well as his quarters. The way out of the tower is now through one of the side doors. As it just so happens, this is the door that leads out into the Bloodhorker encampment, and if you cleared out all of the pirates earlier, this part should be a breeze. As you're making your escape, the East Empire Company begins to bomb the island. This, in theory, would have done a number on the pirates, but they still would have been aggroed onto you as well. The explosions can have an effect on your health, so be careful while leaving the courtyard. Once back at the shoreline, you'll see Adeliza standing at the docks waiting for your arrival. At this point, the final enemy on the island is a lone bandit who was working with the pirates. After clearing the way to Vindici, the player can speak with her about returning to the mainland.
Impressive work. We started the attack once you made the fog scamper away like that. Hope you didn't catch any of the fire. We can head back whenever you're set. There's celebrating to be done. Are you ready to go?
From here, the player can decide if they wish to leave Japhet's Folly. If so, there's no returning, so make sure you've done everything that your heart desires. Looting, exploring, fighting, etc. If you choose to stick around, a lot of Japhet's Folly Tower is now inaccessible due to the explosions. You can still access Halden's quarters though, and there's a previously unexplored area that holds more pirates and more loot. Furthermore, there should be a journal in one of the chests that belong to the Japhet. It details his arrogance and hardships while trying to make life work on this deserted piece of ice. In any case, when ready, the player can speak with Vindici again and return to Windhelm. Once back, the player can enter the East Empire Company's office one last time to catch up with Orthus, receive their reward, and close out the quest.
Give those pirates what for. I can't express how much easier you've made my job. Maybe Adeliza will finally ease up, but I expect she won't. Ah yes, your pay. The company thanks you for your services. Should we ever be able to help you, stop by.
The reward for this quest's completion is a leveled amount of gold. Now, the Bloodhorkers are back to being a bunch of ragtag pirates. Their leader is dead and their organized crime can start to wane off. The EEC's office, as well as their operations, can finally be brought back up in Skyrim. With that, thus ends the quest, Rise in the East. Now let's talk a little bit about it. I think that this mission had a great combination of investigative work as well as action. While retrieving Severus' journal wasn't that tricky, if you were to combine that with locating Stig and finding out about Halden, I think that creates a pretty entertaining flow of detective work. Furthermore, the assault on Japhet's Folly was fun, unique, and action-packed. Japhet's Folly is a unique location in of itself that can only be accessed once. Furthermore, the Bloodhawkers are a fairly distinctive faction that really only come up during this quest. Interestingly, once everything is said and done, there's a chance that the pirates will seek you out in Skyrim's wilderness and enact revenge on you for what you did. Other than those moments though, and I suppose Stig and his men who are now forever at the Wind Peak Inn, that's it for the Bloodhawkers. Now, just in case there was any confusion with regards to the agreement that the Shattershields had with the pirates, essentially, the Bloodhawkers were already wreaking havoc on every single trader and ship on the Sea of Ghosts. With the Civil War raging on, and possibly even due to the aftermath of the Great War, there were hardly any soldiers, sellswords, or mercenaries around to guard the ships. It sounds as though the Shattershields were the only ones to approach the pirates directly. In doing so, they ended up making a pact with the Horkers. The pirates were to let the Shattershield ships go through unharmed and untouched. Meanwhile, every other trader, including the EEC, was to be stopped, robbed, and plundered. However, all a pirate sees is gold, and after a little bit of persuasion from the EEC and other companies, they were more than happy to let their fleets go through. This is when Severus met with Stig in order to renegotiate on their terms, and the rest is history. Now, let's switch things over to the Horkers themselves. It sounds like the Bloodhawkers is actually comprised of many different smaller groups of pirates. Men and women from different backgrounds, races, and classes who have banded together under the reign of this Halden. Or so we think. Stig Saltplank has been running his crew with them for around 9 years, so that means that the Bloodhawkers are at least 9 years old. Orthus mentions that the pirates sail around the continent, from the coast of Hammerfell all the way to the island of Vardenfell. With an operation that big, is it truly fair to say that one man, and one man alone, is the captain of this regime? Is Halden really the only one who's running the show for the Horkers, or are there other captains and leaders out there? Perhaps Halden just runs the show in Skyrim, while other people command the fleets in the other provinces. To me, this just seems like too big of an operation for one man to run alone. Plus, Orthus does tell the player that the EEC has long since believed that the Horkers were using a bunch of different mages in their fleets. Maybe it's actually a ring of wizards and witches who run the show for the pirates. Now, in terms of Halden, I wish there was more lore, background info, or dialogue from him. He's this crucial, notorious, and powerful character for the story. However, all we learn though is that he's a strong mage, he's a Redguard, and he commands the Bloodhawkers. That's about it. In my opinion, it's a bit of a missed opportunity to have a fleshed out and more interesting villain. Then, the final quest for this video is the Heart of Dibella. This one begins with the player entering the city of Markarth. Now, if you've been to the Temple of Dibella, you'll know all about how secretive the priestesses really are. However, if you haven't had any interactions with them, then it's best to get acquainted first. Several online sources, namely the unofficial Elder Scrolls pages, recommend receiving the miscellaneous quest that comes from the beggar, Dagain.
Alms. I said alms, you backbiter. Give a crippled worker a helping hand. Aye, a whole heap of it. You see that temple? Way up there? All them women keeping to themselves? Won't let poor Dagain in, nope. Not even for a look. But they've got a treasure in there. Gold statue size of a child. Who knows what they use it for, but I know what I'll use it for. Well, let's not put it like that. Wouldn't want the Thieves Guild catching wind of us, eh? Nah, just creep in and have a go at taking it out. I'll be here and pay you half of what my man in Riften promised for it. You'll be helping out an old beggar, and the divine smile on that sort of thing.
This acts as a great way of directing the player over to the temple. Plus, the mission sounds easy enough, right? Get in, steal the statue, get out. The temple is located on the southwestern side of town, directly across from Understone Keep. Entering its halls, the first NPC you'll come across is Senna, and among other things, she shares some raunchy dialogue with the Dragonborn.
I'm sorry, the Temple of Dibella is closed. You can receive your blessing if you wish, but the other sisters are in seclusion. A heathen. Lovely. Oh, don't put on that angry look. I'm just teasing you. Dibella is the divine of beauty. She is a patron deity to artists and bards and those who seek life's simple pleasures. The temple offers her blessings to pilgrims, and instruction in enjoying all life has to offer. Well, you are lovely to look at, and there's so many things I could teach you, but I'm afraid the temple isn't taking in new students.
Attempts at getting with the priestess aside, Senna is the one who informs you that the other priestesses are hidden away and busy right now. In fact, the quest marker leads you further into the temple's inner sanctum. However, it's secured by an expert level lock. If lockpicking isn't your strong suit, the priestess has a copy of the key in her inventory. So pickpocketing it off of Senna might be your best bet. Senna is marked as essential, so she can't die and her body can't be looted. Either way, once you've gotten the key and made it through the inner sanctum, you may start to hear chanting. Someone off in the distance keeps saying, "Dibella, guide us." As the player descends further into the temple, the chanting becomes clearer, and eventually, you stumble onto the chamber that holds the 3 other priestesses. While they're hard at work doing whatever it is that they're doing, you can attempt to slip past them undetected, as the golden statue is located in the room just beyond them. However, if you are caught, this brings on a whole other can of worms.
To your Sybil.
What are you doing in here? Stay where you are. The mother will deal with you. Here she is.
And just what do you think you're doing? There are many valuable artifacts all through the temple. Unfortunately for you, we don't allow men into the inner sanctum. You have committed a breach and must pay the penalty. Normally, a quick death. Luckily for you, there are more pressing matters. We could make an example of you, but perhaps you could be put to better use. The ceremony you so rudely interrupted was the exalted protocol of the Dibellan Sibyl. I don't expect you to know what that means. Suffice to say that our Sibyl was recently lost to us. Through the protocol, we have seen the home of the next Sibyl, to the north in a small village pressed against the stone. If you can travel there and retrieve our young Sibyl, your transgression will be forgiven. We believe the place in our vision to be Karthwasten. Now move quickly. The girl must be brought to the temple as soon as possible. The Sibyl of Dibella spends her entire life in direct communion with the goddess. From the time she's a little girl to the moment she expires, she is a direct connection with the Heavenly Mother. From her reverie, we know the mind of our God. We have had a vision of the next Sibyl, living in a village to the north. She must be brought to the temple for her reverie to begin. It's considered a great honor for the family. Their daughter will never know hardship, and the goddess blesses them with great bounty. We prefer not to announce that the Sibyl has died until we can introduce the new one. People like to know that we're connected to the goddess. Have you heard of the blessing of Dibella? It can help you with the wooing of women if that's your aim. Or give you strength if you happen to offend one. Typically, we avoid bestowing it upon men, but for the Sibyl's escort, we could make an exception.
Choosing to be cooperative with the priestesses of Dibella unfortunately fails Dagane's miscellaneous quest. However, it is what brings on the Heart of Dibella, arguably a much better and more satisfying story. Now, before venturing off to find the new Sibyl, if the player did want to carry out their original task, it is possible to revert back and do so. There's a way to complete both quests without interfering with one another. It simply involves not getting caught. If you're able to sneak past all the priestesses, grab the statue and sneak out, you can then turn it over to Dagane.
Give it to me quickly, before they see us together. You've riled up the priestesses, and the guards don't take kindly to that. Here's your share. Nicely done.
After that, you can return to the inner sanctum and then get noticed by the worshippers. Otherwise, if you end up getting caught before taking the statue or while escaping, you'll have to fight your way out, and that'll result in various bounties as well as failing the Heart of Dibella. And when in Orla are level 6 priests and use destruction magic, conjuration, as well as restoration while in battle. As for Hamel, the lead priestess, she matches the player's level, fights using a steel war axe of ice, and also knows a few spells to aid her in battle. The tussle shouldn't be too tricky so long as you space out each fight and create some distance between the priestesses. Now back to the quest at hand. From Markarth, the player's objective is to travel to Karthwasten. That's east of the Reach's capital and west-southwest of Dragonbridge. Given the terrain and territory, there's a good chance that the player will either encounter a Forsworn encampment or a Dragon's Lair/burial ground. Either way, once you reach Karthwasten, you'll likely see some kind of standoff between the local miners and a group of Silverblood mercenaries. While their conflict is fairly interesting, it'll have to be the topic for another video. In any case, now comes the time to begin asking around about the new Sibyl.
I think you might be looking for Enman.
I thought Enman and Meen had a little girl, but I haven't seen her in a while.
Enman's house is one of the few buildings that's in Karthwasten. Going on inside, the main level looks lived in, but it is void of life. Heading upstairs, the player will spot two NPCs, Mina and Enman. The only thing though is that there's no little girl here.
Oh, I'm sorry, I just can't. You'll have to speak to my husband.
You're not from here, and we don't need to be talking. Damn it, man, are you trying to taunt us? Our daughter, Fiotra, was taken from here. The Forsworn descended and they didn't touch anything else, just our little girl. It was the Forsworn from Broken Tower. Never been much trouble before. What's it to you? She... Really? Well, that's... I wouldn't have dreamed. Of course we need her in Markarth then. I'll come with you.
Well, to be honest, that's certainly not the response that one would have expected from Enman. It appears as though the title of Sibyl has more renown than it gets credit for. Whether the player takes on Enman as a follower or not, it doesn't change the outcome for this quest. Enman will be placed at half of the player's level. He fights with a pickaxe and doesn't have any sort of armor or extra protection. If anything, he's more so just a meat shield for the Dragonborn, as trust me, there's a lot to be shielded from. From Karthwasten, Broken Tower Redoubt is a straight shot east. The road out of town leads right to the fort, and from the exterior, the real fun begins. The dungeon is crawling with members of the Forsworn. The player's level is what largely determines the type of Forsworn NPCs that you'll encounter. It could be pillagers, looters, foragers, or even ravagers. The Forsworn use their own types of weapons and armor, with some wielding axes and swords, a few wielding bows, and others dabbling in magic. Interesting to note about the Broken Tower is that all of the NPCs in here, barring the final one, are female. This comes up later in the afterthought session of the quest. Once you've reached the top of the first zone, it leads back out into Skyrim and over to the final area of the fort. This chamber is where Fiotra is being held, and it's also where you encounter a Forsworn boss, a Briarheart. These are strong and deadly opponents, as they're able to wield almost any form of weaponry and can cast a whole array of spells. Once the Briarheart is defeated, the player can loot their body and retrieve the Broken Tower prison key. This is what's used to free Fiotra from her cell.
Are you one of them? Please don't hurt me. Then it's true what they said. I'm touched by the gods. I've heard stories about the wonders of the great temple in Markarth, but I never dreamed that I would even get to see it. I am honored to be called for this duty. Please, lead on. Father!
After that brief interaction, if Enman is still alive, he'll have a heartwarming reunion with Fiotra. Again, it is surprising to see how accepting Enman and Mina are of their daughter becoming the next Sibyl. From this room, the Dragonborn can loot the boss level chests, take any other desired items, and even get a good look at the desecrated shrine to Dibella. Don't worry, this will certainly be a topic of conversation. From here, the father-daughter duo follows the player out of Broken Tower. There's a chance that you might have to clear more NPCs that are on the landings of the exterior, but other than that, you should be home free. Traveling back to Markarth, entering the temple and descending to the inner sanctum, the player can speak with Hamel once more and continue on with their quest.
You found her. I can't believe it. Let the girl come with me and we can begin her preparation. I will send word to her family that she is in good hands. You've truly earned the blessing of Dibella, child. Prostrate yourself before her altar, and she will bestow her gift.
From here, Fiotra is now a permanent resident of the temple. As for Enman, he returns to a simple life with Mina out in Karthwasten. Now, the player can approach the altar in the temple's public area and show reverence. Doing so and drinking from its waters, this adds the permanent effect called Agent of Dibella. It allows the player to deal increased combat damage to NPCs of the opposite sex. With that, thus ends the quest, the Heart of Dibella. Now let's talk a little bit about it. It's neat how this is technically a hidden quest. You never would have known about it if you didn't break into the inner sanctum in a tucked away chamber of Markarth. While out on Sanguine's Daedric quest, you might have been curious as to what was on the other side of the door. But otherwise, Dagain's personal mission is probably the bigger driving factor for discovering the other priestesses and by extension, the Heart of Dibella. Interestingly, according to the unofficial Elder Scrolls pages, Dagain once played a role in this quest, but his part was ultimately cut. It's unknown what further role he would have played, but my best guess is that maybe it was just easier to have his portion go towards the miscellaneous quest. Maybe it was just minor involvement and smaller dialogue parts that were removed. This could have been done to make the Heart of Dibella more concise, as stealing the statue could become a very definitive and closed-off version of the story. Now, if you were like me, you might have been a little confused on what the Sibyl actually is. Hamel sort of mentions it when you first meet with her, but you also receive a slew of other information that muddles everything else. For the most part, I feel like Fiocha's dialogue while rescuing her helped to clear any confusion. Essentially, the Sibyl is the chosen one in the eyes of Dibella. She has a direct link and therefore communication with the divine. She's pretty much a prophet in her own right. Think of her as the listener for the goddess. If Dibella has a message for her worshippers, or vice versa, Fiocha would be the messenger or middle woman. Beyond that, there isn't a whole lot more lore on the Sibyl. It seems to be a newer concept within the Elder Scrolls. What other duties or rituals that can be expected of her are unknown. I suppose one thing's for sure though, she'll be looked after by the temple, the city, and the goddess for the rest of her life. That would also explain why Enman and Mina were so cooperative with the Dragonborn. The obvious part is that the player would help them in getting their daughter back. But the other reason is that the title of Sibyl must be more well known than what I had given it credit for. It goes beyond the worshippers of Dibella. Even these small town mining folk know of this prestigious position. I expected to receive some kind of resistance from Fiocha's parents when telling them that their daughter had to be taken away to the temple. Maybe her being kidnapped by the Forsworn was the unexpected fastball though, and then being told that she's been chosen by the Divines was an easy softball. Either way, that leads us over to Broken Tower Redoubt. This is one of the many Forsworn encampments in the area. The most notable part about this is the room that Fiocha was being held in. It has a desecrated shrine of Dibella. The statue was covered in blood. Gore, guts, and bones line the tables and walls all around it. Now, if you recall earlier, I mentioned that everyone in this dungeon, minus the Briarheart, was a female NPC. Furthermore, the Forsworn knew that Fiocha was set to be the next Sibyl and that she had a connection with Dibella. So, that means we can draw up a few connections and theories here. For starters, it seems as though the Forsworn were able to do the Exalted Protocol, the exact same ritual that the priestesses of Dibella had done. In doing so, they were also successful and ended up locating Fiocha. This shows that the Forsworn, a faction that's deemed animalistic, sadistic, and chaotic, are equally appreciated and valued by the goddess. In the eyes of Dibella, they appear to have just as much power as the priestesses themselves. That being said, maybe the Exalted Protocol is just some ritual that uses a specific type of magic. This magic allows any party to find the Sibyl. An alternate aim is that the Forsworn were going to use Fiocha in order to possibly force Dibella's hand at doing something. Probably some divine information or gift, but who really knows as the story never got that far. Either way, the Forsworn had just as much information on the Sibyl as the literal worshippers of Dibella, and to me it feels like that conveys a lot. Interestingly, it seems as though these same rules of women only apply in Broken Tower Redoubt, again barring the Briarheart, whom I think had to be a male due to the way the character was coded and created. Either way, to me this further demonstrates that these Forsworn were adamant followers of Dibella. They went as far as to only hold female members in this area. I think this could challenge the way that we perceive the Divines. Again, the Forsworn go against everything that a civilized Tamriel stands for. And yet, if they're able to receive the same kind of treatment from the divines as everyone else, it relays a different kind of message and representation of the gods than what most priests, worshippers, and followers tend to believe. After all, the Temple of Dibella showers their shrine in love, care, and gifts, while Broken Tower Redoubt covers theirs in blood, guts, and remains. Yet, both seem to have received an equal amount of attention from their goddess. Thank you everyone for coming along this journey with me. Let me know down below your thoughts on these 3 quests, and until next time, keep on adventuring.